Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. What is the DSM? Well, it is basically the Bible for telling people what diagnosis you're giving a client in the field of mental health. And so, I'm going to be giving the updates from DSM-4 to DSM-5 because I feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had. These updates, some of them, I imagine from this video, people will talk about different things that I bring up right now. Some of them, it's just a passe change. So first thing that stands out is, rather than the Roman numeral 5 that looks like a V, the DSM-5 just uses the number 5. I guess Dungeons and Dragons isn't popular with people anymore, and they're not trying to look snazzy or snobby. So they did away with Roman numerals. Great. In my field, substance use disorders, there have been a couple of changes, such as we now call it substance use disorder. Words like dependence and abuse have been eliminated, and that used to be the two levels of substance abuse disorder in previous incarnations. Basically, the dependence comes from abuse. It's like they were trying to make one line in between, the different stages of addiction. And even addiction is a word that is hardly used in the DSM, because at what stage do you call someone addicted? So, yeah, the initial abuse and then dependence model is no longer there. Now it's mild substance use disorder, moderate substance use disorder, or severe substance use disorder. And there are other modifiers you could put on that as it spells out in the DSM. There used to be 11 criteria for substance use disorder, and there still is, but one was added and one was removed. And the one that was added seems like a no-brainer, okay? Like, why it wasn't there before, I don't know. But craving is now one of the criteria that you can use to diagnose someone. Do they still crave something, even if they haven't used it in a long time? If the craving is there, that's one of the criteria. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but it wasn't there before. Now, what was removed is very interesting. Legal troubles. Legal troubles are no longer used to diagnose substance use disorder. Why? Well, with certain drugs, it wasn't a very good indicator of whether or not somebody had a problem, especially in certain socioeconomic statuses. You can have soccer moms that hold it together, enough to get to work and drop their kids off and make every one of their kids' games, but still they are a raging alcoholic. And yeah, some things are more illegal than others. So legal troubles, not used for diagnosing substance use disorder anymore. Next, they removed something called polysubstance, which meant more than one substance. It was like a catch-all. Somebody who, whatever is in front of them, they use it. Well, now we have to spell out each and every substance that they used in their diagnosis, each one that they have a problem with. Polysubstance as a pencil whipping tool is no longer allowed. Instead of the word nicotine, tobacco is now being used. Same with THC, cannabis is used. Now, there's two reasons I can think of for this. I don't know what they used to make this decision, but the two reasons I can think of. Number one, in those plants, there is not just nicotine or THC. There's other chemicals to it. And number two, and here's the most important thing, nicotine is now being used as a replacement therapy for tobacco with, chewing gum and lozenges and patches. And 20 years ago, when the DSM-4 came out, that was not the case. So, all of this new tobacco replacement therapy, even I'm going to go out on a limb here and say e-cigarettes. They're being seen as a harm reduction model, replacement therapy. So, yeah, they changed from using the word nicotine to the word tobacco. Gambling disorder is now under substance use disorders, which is weird because the substance is gambling, but it's lighting up the brain the same way, so they have included that. And they're still not sure as to whether they should put internet gaming in, but it is mentioned in the DSM. There's a couple of other things that don't really translate well to lay public, like disorders being seen on a lifespan continuum, documentation in non-axial format, just the whole holistic approach. It's more integrated in the DSM-5. What is something that might be talked about outside of this video is that substance use disorders are now top priority in treatment. They're the principal diagnosis. Someone is coming off of an opiate or meth or something, that is the first thing you treat. Okay, and it's spelled out right in the DSM. That's the principal diagnosis. Treat that first. And that might make sense to people in that you're not really seeing the real person if their symptoms are being masked by a substance. Makes sense, right? There's another pull for that, and that is that in the last 20 years, since the DSM-4 first started coming out, third-party billing has been taken away from licensed professional counselors and licensed marriage and family therapists. So those people cannot bill third-party. But who can bill third party? A licensed addiction counselor or licensed clinical social worker. And so programs that have those in them and can tie, say, a co-occurring disorder to substance abuse and roll the treatment all together, those programs can still bill Medicaid. So, yeah, the real reason why substance abuse is getting more priority, I think, is because we've made drugs into a boogeyman in our society, and it's easier to scare people into paying for substance abuse treatment than it is to convince people to offer taxpayer-assisted treatment for all mental health problems. Think about that. Last thing that really affects me in my job is that GAF scores have been eliminated. So it's weird because a lot of old paperwork still needs the GAF scores. So there's like a transitional period that everyone in the field is going through. So what else is in the changes in the DSM? You no longer have to find ADHD in infancy or childhood in order to diagnose it. It's something that can actually come about in just an adult diagnosis. Schizoaffective disorder is now based on like lifetime rather than episodic criteria. Schizophrenia no longer has symptoms of bizarre delusions or Schneiderian delusions. That's probably a leap in understanding that anyone who knows anyone with schizophrenia would really agree with. You don't need that kind of stuff to have a schizophrenic. The 5 subtypes of schizophrenia have been eliminated from the DSM. These were things like paranoid schizophrenia and disorganized schizophrenia. Those are gone. Bipolar has a new emphasis on energy and mood. And it has the new specifier with mixed features. This is a specifier that is in a lot of things now in the DSM-5. You used to have things like mixed episode, or just outright diagnosing a whole other type of illness with, instead of just saying with mixed features of something else. Which gets very it gets confusing when clients are just collecting every different thing in the DSM as different mental health problems that they had, when really it was still the same mental health problem that just had features of something else. And that's been addressed. So major depressive disorder is in there, and that's a depression that lasts for months. It has the mixed features modifiers in it. Has a lot of changes in it, like dysthymia. Now when you have a kid who's under 18 who is basically rebellious at home, and the parents want a diagnosis for them, and they push really hard and say, no, we're not going to quit bringing him in to see you until you give him a diagnosis because he's talking back to us. You can get disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, and I know that's there's people who actually deserve that, but there's also parents who doctor shop to get that. Also, with major depressive disorder, there's now a bereavement exclusion, which basically says you're not going to get diagnosed with depression or major depressive disorder if you just had somebody important in your life die on you, and it's completely understandable that you would be depressed. So they give you some time to heal before they say, oh, well, you've been depressed for 2 months. Stamp you depressive. So, let's see. OCD. That was a weird one. See, anxiety used to have OCD underneath it, and also PTSD. Now, OCD is now apart from anxiety, and it is under obsessive compulsive and related disorders. And it's like its own chapter instead of being under anxiety. It's mostly because of differences in treatment. And also, PTSD is in a different section than anxiety now, and it's called, the section that it's in is called trauma and stressor related disorders. So that's a thing. And they still haven't recognized internet gaming disorder, but I'm going to expect that in the next iteration of DSM, by DSM-6, there's going to be internet gaming disorder, there's just going to be regular internet addiction, internet separation, anxiety, all sorts of things that will revolve around the internet in the next iteration. But we've got a few decades before that comes out. Now, if you want to read a pretty good breakdown of most of the changes, I'm going to put a link in the description box to a 19-page summary of all of the changes, some of which I have brought up here. But I think, from my point of view, I brought up the major changes in the DSM-5.